Welcome to the Self Reliant Living Show, where we talk all about a self-reliant lifestyle to save money, live greener, eat healthier, and be prepared for anything so you can take care of the ones you love in good times and bad. I'm your host, Jennifer Osich, a homeschooling mom of 3 boys. I'm the author of the Preparedness Planner series, and my husband and I are the lead teachers of Self Reliant School, a website dedicated to giving you the skills and confidence to take care of yourself and your community. Be sure to stop by and pick up your free videos from inside Self Reliant School that will get you started growing, cooking, and preserving your own food today. You can pick these up at selfreliantschool.com/free. Now, on with the show. Welcome to the Self Reliant Living Show. We are going to take listener questions with dehydrating. So if you have any questions, go ahead and write them in the comments. I think that Facebook is a little bit delayed, so if I don't see your comment just right away, just wait a second or two and then I should see it. And so do ask your questions. I have some already prepared as well, so I'm going to start going over some of those, and then as your questions come up, I will do my best to answer them. So, okay, so let me just look and see. When I'm looking down, I'm actually looking at you guys. I'm looking at the comments and checking on what you guys are saying. I love it when you visit with each other in the comments. There's been some great knowledge being exchanged there in the comments in when we are live on Facebook and Periscope. So I love that we can be like a community or be a community rather, and share our knowledge with each other. Okay, so the first question is from Lynn, and she says, I want to get a dehydrator as my next appliance. You talk all about Excalibur dehydrator. In your opinion, is that the best on the market? And so the short answer is yes. I think that is one of the better dehydrators on the market. However, if you're just starting out in dehydrating, that is that's an investment to make. So you may want to start with something that's not as expensive, and you may want to start with a smaller dehydrator, and that's perfectly fine to do that. I would probably do that because you just never know. I mean, dehydrated food might not be something that you like, or you don't want to take the time to put food in the dehydrator and let it dry, because it does take a little while to do that. It's not a lot of hands-on work, but you have to wait for it. So that depending on your circumstances, that might not be something that you can do. So I would definitely start with a more inexpensive model. But if you are certain that that's something that you want to do and continue to do, then yes, I believe the Excalibur is the better style of dehydrator. It has a different setup than some other dehydrators, and basically that has to do with the way the fan is set up. In some dehydrators, the fan is at the bottom, so the air sort of flows up and then out. In the Excalibur dehydrator, the fan is at the back, and so what happens is the air is flowing more evenly over the food. So I really like that. Now I will say that it's not perfect, and there are some things that the other style of the main style that I'm talking about with the different layers is the Nesco. And so if I say Nesco, that's what I mean is the trays that stack on top of each other, and then the Excalibur, that style is with the trays that slide out. So if you are unfamiliar with those terms, that's what I mean is Nesco is, like I said, the stackable trays, and then the Excalibur is the trays that slide out. Okay, so there are some benefits to the dehydrator, the Nesco, where it stacks on top of each other, that the Excalibur doesn't have. So there is that, but I do believe that the Excalibur, if you are writing the pros and cons down, on a piece of paper, what one will do and what it won't, the Excalibur has more pros than cons. So that being said, yes, I do recommend an Excalibur dehydrator. Okay, so I'm going to keep going over here and monitoring the questions. Good afternoon, Susan. And I am just going to go here. And like I said, every couple of minutes I'm going to look. Like I said before, the Facebook feed is just a little bit delayed. So if I don't get to your questions straight away, don't worry. I'm going to keep checking and then I will be able to see it. Okay, so Susan asked, is there anything that cannot be dehydrated? There are things that shouldn't be dehydrated. I guess that, almost anything can be dehydrated, but there are some things that should not be dehydrated, and the reason for that is the safety after. Like if you put it in storage or whatever, then it could go bad or it could get moldy or it's just not safe to eat. And so some of those things would include mainly things that have a high fat content. So things like avocados don't work well dehydrated. Things like you can dehydrate milk. I know there's some debate about that. You have to do it safely. And then you can dehydrate eggs. I know there's some debate about that, but you have to do that safely as well. And I did a whole show on the things that you can and cannot dehydrate. So if you want to refer to that show, you can go to selfreliantlife.tv and it is 003. So, but mainly the foods with a high fat content are foods that you would not want to dehydrate, with those few exceptions there. So you wouldn't really want to dehydrate things like bacon, and you can do a beef jerky, but those are lean cuts of meat. And there are certain meats that you would not want to dehydrate raw. You can do most of them cooked, but like I said, if you refer to that show, like I said, we go over that in great detail. So that would be a great place to go for more information on that. Okay, so I am in here and I am looking at some of the questions here. Somebody's saying that they just got an Excalibur off of Craigslist. Congratulations, that looks like a great deal, Carol. That's wonderful. Okay, let's see. Oh, and Colleen is in there. She is our resident expert. She dehydrates a lot. So she is in there answering your questions as well, and I am so happy to have her. So I'm just going to go on to the next question here. What temperature do I dehydrate garlic at? Okay, so garlic is a vegetable, and you can go ahead and cook it. I usually don't. I just go ahead and dehydrate that raw, and I will usually dehydrate it about 125 to 135 degrees. Just kind of, really, I just kind of put it in the middle of those two, so at 130 degrees. And the thing is, I will say right here that if you want to have a living food or a raw food, because there is certain enzymes in food that you might want to keep in there depending on what you're going to use your dehydrated food for. So that is a big question when you're dehydrating it. Before you start, you want to have the end in mind. What are you going to use this for? Are you just going to make it into a powder and then use it as garlic powder when you're cooking? At that point, you can dehydrate it on about 135-ish degrees. If you're going to use it for medicinal purposes and you want to keep some of those enzymes in there, then I would dehydrate it at a lower temperature, about 118 degrees. You don't want to go over 118 because over that mark is when all of the enzymes are neutralized or they're destroyed. So if you want to use it, like I said, for something like medicinal purposes, then I would definitely do it at a lower temperature. Now keep in mind, if you do it at a lower temperature, it's going to take longer to dehydrate. So having said that, you also want to take into account your humidity in your area, because the higher the humidity, the longer it's going to take to dehydrate, and then the longer it takes, the more risk you have of something going wrong during the dehydrating process. So just to keep that in mind. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to keep looking down here. Carol's asking, is there any trick to dehydrating corn so it's similar to freeze-dried corn? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm assuming that you're meaning that it keeps its shape and everything perfectly, and that it doesn't sort of contract because of the water loss. And the answer to that is no. Not, well, I guess that it just depends. If you dehydrate raw corn, you might be able to keep the shape a little better. I don't recommend dehydrating raw corn because, like I said, normally people are going to use that in cooked dishes, recipes, and so if you do dehydrate something that's raw, or dehydrate something raw, and then plan to use it in something that's cooked, then you might have a longer time rehydrating it, and then that might throw your recipe off a little bit if it takes forever to rehydrate that. I don't normally dehydrate, just while we're on the subject of corn, I don't normally dehydrate frozen or canned corn. I know that is a something that's going around like on the internet that you can do it. I mean, it's not like you can't do it, and it is safe to eat, but in my opinion it loses a lot of taste, and so I stick with fresh corn. And then if you blanch your corn or corn on the cob, you cook that first and then you cut it off, then it retains all of its taste. It's phenomenal, and it's great in terms of convenience. So I would definitely try it that way. I did a post about that, and I compared all of the different ways that you could dehydrate corn, so definitely check that out. I will have that link in the show notes for you, but there's no, the taste there's no comparing the taste. The fresh corn just won out completely, and so just keep that in mind. But no, I'm assuming you're talking about keeping it really pretty and keeping it shape. And no, freeze drying is such a different process that it's not dehydrating. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to go on to answer another question. Keep your questions, like I said, coming in the feed because Facebook is just a little bit delayed, but I'm checking constantly, so hopefully I'm going to get them really quick and I can answer them. Okay, so the next one comes from Deborah. Do I have to cook my potatoes before I dehydrate them? No, you don't, but it's probably a good idea if you do, because if you don't, your potatoes will probably turn a dark color, kind of a brownish color. And the thing is that, like I was saying before, there's not really many dishes, recipes, I don't want to say none at all, but none that I use that would require raw potatoes, that would be raw when you serve it. So you're going to cook them anyway. So if you go ahead and cook them before you dehydrate them, they're going to be it's just going to be that much faster when you're ready to use them. And they dehydrate beautifully. My favorite way to dehydrate potatoes is to grate them in a food processor, and they just turn out wonderful when they're rehydrated. Nobody can tell that they had been once dehydrated, and as a matter of fact, I prefer them to be dehydrated because the recipes just go so much faster. But so yes, I would definitely recommend cooking your potatoes. You don't have to you can cut them into slices. You don't have to grate them. You can cut them into a whole bunch of different shapes and still dehydrate them just fine. Keep in mind that if you did something like wedges, that would take a longer time to dehydrate. And I'm not sure that I would do the pieces that big, but definitely slices and grating and little bitty cubes, those are great to have on hand. So, okay, I'm going to continue to check the comments here. Okay, so Mary Lou is saying, I shredded, blanched, and dehydrated white potatoes, and when I rehydrated, they were tasteless. Any idea what I did wrong? Well, it could be that you overcooked them in the first place, because that could do it, because they're at that point, because the longer you cook something, the longer or the more it's going to lose its taste. It's one of those arts of cooking. You've got to, kind of get that sweet spot where you really do have the taste of the food and it comes to life. Now, keep in mind that dehydrating, even though, we're not using preservatives or anything like that, it is a process. And so the more you process food, the more it's going to lose some taste. Nothing is going to be like fresh. If you can something and then open it and eat it at a different time, it's not going to be. If you have canned peaches, they're not going to taste like a fresh peach. And then the same thing with dehydrating. It's not going to taste exactly like fresh. Now, it can get pretty close, and a lot of people, they can't tell the difference. And dehydrated food, I think, gets the closest to fresh because there's so little manipulation with the food. All you're doing is taking out the moisture. And so, it can get pretty close, but keep in mind it's still a process and nothing is going to be like fresh. So you just have to have that in your mind before you begin. But like I said, it's a lot better than a lot of the alternatives out there in terms of cost and in terms of nutrition. Because at this, what some of the stuff that you get at the store is scary with the ingredients. And then also if you do, want to get something that's nutritious and doesn't have preservatives, then, the cost is going to be really, it's going to cost a lot more. So just keep those things in mind. Okay. So Jackie's asking, and Marissa's asking too about potatoes. Okay, which will be the best method to cook potatoes? And then Jackie says, my question is regarding the potatoes. Do you cook them after you have shred them, and how long, please? Just blanching or cooking? Okay, so cooking is usually what I do. Now, let me just say this. If you are like slicing them really, really thin, then it's going to take just a really little bit to cook them. So it might seem like blanching, if that makes sense. Okay, so, but the way that I do mine is, for shredded and cubed, is I go ahead and I cut them up or shred them. No, I don't. That's bad. I've got it backwards. Okay, what I do is I go ahead and cook them if I'm shredding them. And I have a post on this as well, and I will link to it. So if I'm shredding them, I go ahead and I cook the potatoes, and I just quarter them and boil them just like normal. You could steam them as well. You could put them like in an Instant Pot, for example. That would be a great way to cook them with steam, but you could also boil them, and normally I just boil them because I have a huge pot. And then I will take them and I will put them in the refrigerator. So I usually put them in the refrigerator overnight or until they're really cold all the way through. Then I will take them and I will put them in a food processor, and I will shred them. Now, this is a little bit tricky because you're cooking them first, and you really, really want to make sure that you do not overcook them. So what I do is I take a fork or a skewer or something, and I cook them just to the point where I can easily get the fork in. Nothing is coming apart. They're not crumbly. They're not mushy. And the other trick to this, and I do this in a large batch, so this is a big problem for me, but when I'm cooking them, even when I turn off the heat, they're still going to continue to cook. And then even when I put them in the sink and go ahead and drain off the water, they're still really hot and they're still cooking. So with that in mind, you could go, and do a smaller batch. That would help that. Like I said, I just throw them all in there. So what I do is I just get them, al dente, just cooked, because I know they're going to continue to cook, and then I will go ahead and drain off the water knowing that they're still cooking, and then I will usually put them in a pot that's not hot, it's cool, so that will help cool them, or I will spread them out like on a cookie sheet or something like that to cool to room temperature, then put them in the refrigerator, then I'll put them in the food processor. So now let me go on to if you cube your potatoes. What I do there is I start out with raw, I cube them, then I cook them, then I dehydrate them. And then the same thing, let's see, with slices, which you want to do, or what I do, because I do mine super thin. And so that would be difficult to cook them first and then slice them super thin. So I slice them super thin, and then, because I use a mandolin, I do that super thin, and then I blanch them or cook them. You know, it's really cooking because it's all the way through, but it seems like blanching because it's such a short period of time. And then I will put those in a like an ice bath. And that is also an option if you wanted to do that for your potatoes that are quartered. You could put them in an ice bath really quick or run cold water. That would stop the cooking. I normally, you know, like I said, my batches are huge, so I usually don't do that. Just stop just a little bit before, you know, they're perfectly done, if that makes sense. So that's how I do my potatoes. And I do have a post, like I said, on how to do the shredded potatoes, and I'll put that link in the show notes. Okay, so Donna says, I spray my sliced potatoes with real lemon juice before dehydrating. Keeps the potatoes whiter and more appetizing looking. Yes, that certainly is an option if you want to do that, because they will turn a little bit. Remember, I hope you're not dehydrating with any preservatives, but because we're not dehydrating with any preservatives, then oxidation is going to occur. And so, yeah, that's a good tip. All right, so let's see here. Let's see. I've got deep skillet to even cooking. Okay, so people are saying they can't wait to try that. Yeah, so go ahead and let me know how your potatoes are going when you start dehydrating them. I would love to hear about your experiences. Okay, so I have a bad habit of letting the show go on and on and on because I just love talking to you guys. It's just the highlight of my week to get on here and chat with you and just, you know, just hear you guys or see you guys comment here. Because it's just, like I said, it just makes me feel like part of this community, and it just is a wonderful thing, and I love that. So I have this really, really bad habit of just going on and on and on and on and on, and I'm going to really work on that, because I know that you know, you guys have things to do, and I don't want to keep you forever and ever, and we can always have part 2. So that's just fine too, right? We can have part 2 of this because I know there's a lot of people with more questions, because I have a ton of questions. I think I've gotten through 3 and I had like 22. So I know there's a ton of questions when it comes to dehydrating, and like I said, I would love to do a part 2 of this, and we will see about doing that in the near future. But like I said, I'm going to try and keep this really close to 30 minutes as possible. So I'm going to do one more question, and then I'm going to make an announcement that I'm super excited about. Okay, so the next question comes from Vicky. Okay, she asked, is dehydrated mango sweet when it's finished? Well, if it's sweet to begin with, it'll be even sweeter when it's finished. And this is the reason why. When you dehydrate something, you take out the moisture, so the sugars and the solid parts that are left are concentrated. So any fruit that you dehydrate is going to be a little bit or a lot, depending on, you know, what you started with, sweeter when you dehydrate it. So, but then again, like I said, you have to keep in mind about what you started with. If you have bad mangoes to start with, you're not going to wind up with good dehydrated mangoes. So just keep that in mind in terms of any kind of fruit that you are dehydrating. If you have blackberries that you're dehydrating and they're not so sweet, then when you dehydrate them, they may be a little, like a tad bit more sweet, but if the sugar's not there to begin with, then, you know, you can't concentrate it, and it's not going to be sweet. It's not going to be a huge difference there. So I feel like that the sweeter it is to begin with, the bigger the difference in the end, if that makes sense, because there's just so much more sugar in there. If you don't have a lot to start with, you're not going to end up with a lot. So that is my answer to that, and I'm going to go ahead and check the comments really quick. Like I said, there's a little bit of delay, and I just want to make sure that I am getting as many as possible. And if you are catching the replay of this on Facebook, then go ahead and leave your questions in the comments, and I will continue to answer them as the day goes on, because like I said, I just love hearing from you, and talking to you. Okay, so now I am going to make an announcement that I'm so excited about, and that is that I have a brand new dehydrating book. And this is an ebook, and what I have done is I have created a dehydrating book, and it has charts and basic methods in it. And by charts, what I mean is I have taken like most of the common vegetables. I don't want to say all because it's never everything, right? But most of the common vegetables, because that's mainly what we cook with. I mean, we might do some desserts and whatever with fruit, but mainly we cook with the vegetables. So what I have done is I have taken those vegetables, and then I have measured them out before I dehydrated them and then after. So basically I have made a chart of the conversion, like how much of something that is not dehydrated equals something that is dehydrated. So I have not seen anybody else do this. Some people say that it can't be done, and the reason, there are variables. So it's not a perfect chart, but it is so much better than having nothing, especially if you are starting out. Because after all, you want to go through all this work of dehydrating something, and you want to be able to cook with it. So I have made this chart, and it's in this book. Then I've also made a chart of dehydrating times and temperatures, and I know that those are some common things that you can find elsewhere. But I've also taken into account the humidity. So if you have a certain percentage of humidity, then this is a ballpark of how long things should take to dehydrate. So those charts are in there. I go over dehydrating and what it means, the benefits. And then I have also gone ahead and put all of our blog posts, all of our basic tutorials on how to dehydrate different things in this book, and it's like over 150 pages, and I've made it where you can print it out and you can use it in your kitchen. So I am super excited to announce this book. It's called Dehydrating Charts and Basic Methods, and it's not available just yet. It is coming on Monday, which is going to be September 12th. So if you're listening to the replay after September 12th, then it's already out, and you can go and see what it's all about for yourself. But if you're interested in knowing more about this today, you can go to selfreliantschool.com/dry-food, and then there will be a place for you to sign up, and I will email you on Monday when everything is ready to go, and you can learn more about this. So I am super excited to announce this. This is a long time coming, and I hope that it's just going to be super useful for you guys. So okay, so Joy's saying she can't wait for the book. I can't wait for it to come out either. I am so super excited about this. Okay, so I would love, like I said, for those questions to keep coming. I have a ton more to go through, so I know there's going to be a part 2 to this. It probably won't be consecutive, which means next week, but we will get to it really soon, because it's something that obviously there's a big need for. Everybody wants to ask some questions and maybe get some answers, and then also all of us share what's going on in our own kitchens. So if somebody is asking for the link one more time, I will go ahead and put it in the show notes, of course, and I will put it in the post for Facebook too, but let me go ahead and give it to you again. It's selfreliantschool.com/dry-food, and if you are listening to this before the 12th, it's just going to be, when you go there, it'll be a sign up with your email and your name, so you can get notified, because this is coming out on September 12th. So we're a few days out, but I just wanted to go ahead and let you know about it, because I just couldn't keep it to myself any longer. I'm excited about it. And and also to give you some time and to look forward to it, because I would love for you to come and learn more about it. Okay, So also, I want to mention really quick that if you are serious about dehydrating, either for making live food, that is, raw food, if you want to, if you have adopted a raw food diet and you are looking for ideas and instructions about how to go ahead and dehydrate, or if you would like to dehydrate food for storage, we have an entire e-course on dehydrating, and we go over all of that in our course. We go over how to dehydrate milk and eggs, vegetables, like almost every vegetable you could find. Not everyone on the face of the earth, but many, many vegetables and fruit, and the different methods that it takes to dehydrate those. So we have that. Also included in that course is things like dehydrating nuts, dehydrating sprouted flour, that sort of thing. So it's very comprehensive, and we would love to have you take that course if you're interested. If you're interested in just sort of trying it before you buy it type thing, we have a free video series, and there is one dehydrating video in there, so you can definitely check that out, and you can go to selfreliantschool.com/free for that, and that will also get you on our emailing list, and you can be notified of the book that way. So you won't be double emailed. It's just one list, and it'll go out to everybody, so whichever one you decide will be fine. Okay, so I just want to go ahead and check the comments really quick. Colleen, you're just such a wonderful person being here. Okay, so there's one last question. Is there a trick to dehydrating mushrooms? I did mine raw, and they are quite rubbery when added to dishes. Any tips? Did I set my dehydrator too hot? I don't know, Mary Lou. I have not had that issue with mushrooms. One thing that I recommend with mushrooms is to get, you don't want your slices super thick, and you also want to make sure that they are completely dehydrated before you put them into storage. And I'm finding the more and more I talk to people in my own experience too, that sometimes it takes a long time to dehydrate stuff. I mean, blackberries can be up to 72 hours, and that's a long time, right? And a lot of times people will not dehydrate them completely. I mean, they're dry to the touch, and they seem dry, but they're just not dry enough, and so they retain some moisture. So there's that. And then if they're rubbery when they're rehydrated, it might be that they weren't rehydrated enough. Because they shouldn't be rubbery. So with that though, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go, because I'm really trying. I'm a little bit over, but I'm gonna do it this time. And like I said, I look forward to talking to you again about the subject, because it is one of my favorite subjects. And so rest assured, there'll be a part 2. Remember, being self-reliant is not about being selfish. It's not just about you. It's about, taking care of yourself so that you can take care of the ones that you love. Take care until we talk again. I'm so glad you could join me today. Here's what to do next. Head over to selfreliantlife.tv to pick up the show notes for this episode and to watch replays of older episodes. To go directly to the show notes for this episode, go to selfreliantlife.tv, and then without a space, type a / and then the number of today's episode. You can watch this show live every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific, live on Facebook or the Periscope app. Don't forget to stop by selfreliantschool.com/free to get your free Self-Reliant School videos that will help you get started living a self-reliant life. Also, if you're listening to this show as a podcast and you've liked what you've heard today, please subscribe through Stitcher, iTunes, or your favorite podcast app. If you're on a mobile device, just search for the Self Reliant Living Show. If you're on a laptop or desktop, just go to selfreliantlife.tv/iTunes. And while you're there, please leave a review. I love to hear from you. You leaving feedback makes it easier for others that are interested in living a self-reliant life to to find my podcast. Take care until we talk again.